Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, with thanksgiving. I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Sing with us. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, pure and holy, tried and true, tried and true, with thanksgiving. I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Hello and welcome to the Experience of the Soul podcast. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson. I am the host, and I welcome you in today. I'm also lovingly known as RCA. We are here in a very special place with a lot of beautiful people and special friends. And, of course, we want to welcome in my producer, Mr. Sean Kilgore.
Thank you so much. Hello, friends. Welcome into episode 409 of Experience of the Soul.
What?
Sacred Spaces, coming to you from a very sacred space.
Yes, in the yurt. Dear friends, Carol Ann and Gary gave us permission to record in the yurt today, and it's a great day to talk about sacred spaces, so we're going to do that in a moment because we are, in fact, sitting in one. This is a model of what, Mongolians have used for thousands of years, so it's very, very sacred with a lot of beautiful symbolism.
Yes. So today is, of course, Monday, April 20th. You might be joining us at any time, and whenever you are joining us, we're glad you're here. So I don't know if you might be feeling this too, but the energy going into this week sort of feels a little bit different in sort of a forward momentum kind of way. For me, it just feels like there's like a subtle sense that things are shifting or maybe something new is actually starting to take shape, which is a really good feeling.
Yeah.
So starting today through May 2nd, in the Baha'i tradition, is the Festival of Ridvan. So this is considered one of the most sacred times of the year for our Baha'i friends, marking the declaration of Baha'u'llah as a messenger of God. So this is inviting a deeper sense of purpose and unity. It carries kind of a really grounded feeling with it. It's not just about celebration, but about stepping into who you're here to be.
Amen to that.
I was like, man, that's a powerful statement. Stepping into who you are here to be. So we take this moment to honor those observing this sacred time in the Baha'i faith. I don't know if
I love the Baha'i faith. So I always say that, though. I'm like, should I get a new line for that? But I'm always reminded, because so many of our people know Daniel Nahmod and his song One Power. He mentions Baha'u'llah. I knew very little about the Baha'i faith, and Daniel connected me to a degree. And then in Orlando, I was friends with the leaders of that faith, and it is a beautiful tradition. Yeah. So
Excellent.
Always happy to honor that, and it very often aligns with our teaching. So I love the connection.
Excellent. All right. Well, so midweek this week we celebrate Earth Day. So while this is widely known across all traditions, it really kind of lands spiritually for us, just as a simple reminder that how we care for the earth is truly connected to how we show up in our own lives. This is all part of the same relationship, right? So we hold all who honor and protect our sacred home in our hearts, and remember that what we share as one human race matters, especially when it comes to our responsibility for the beauty and balance of the world that we live in.
Gosh, so true. I am going to be doing a special meditation, at Unity this week, and I think it's so important to honor the earth, and it's not just about recycling. I feel like we've kind of lost the thread there. It's like just because we throw it in a container, we think we've done something fabulous for the earth. And I mean, it's a good thing, and I do it. But there's so much more of honoring, reflecting, being in nature itself, which again is part of our setting today. Also, I thought very apropos for today to be celebrating Earth Day in the midst of all this beautiful trees and earth and sky and water. Yeah.
Well, and speaking of the magnificence of the earth, overnight Tuesday and Wednesday this week, so this is April 21st and 22nd, the Lyrids meteor shower will peak. So this feels especially fitting after the excitement of the Artemis II and the safe return of those astronauts a couple of weeks ago. So I think maybe a lot of us have been looking up a little bit more lately since then, right? So this was interesting. The Lyrids are one of the oldest recorded meteor showers, first noted by Chinese astronomers as far back as 687 BCE, and they described them as stars falling like rain, which is very kind of poetic, and that kind of idea has shown up a lot in poetry and music and that kind of thing.
Yes.
So let this be a gentle reminder that sometimes even a brief glance up to the night sky can pull you out of the rush of your daily life and reconnect you with just how much wonder is still available to us on this planet.
So true, my friends, so true. And, to our listeners, I want to just encourage you, if you haven't gone out and looked at the night sky recently, go out and do that. Somebody recently told me, you need to get the app. I said, I am not getting an app to look at the night sky, to look through my phone. But friends, if that's your way of doing it, that's fine. But
well, no, I will say for the education, because I have used the Skyview app, but
for the education. But then, not the entire world is not meant to be viewed through our phone. But I was just out last night, did a big fire, and we were showing the kids, about there's the Big Dipper, there's the Belt of Orion. I love that because it always brings me into the awe and wonder of God. I always feel so connected when I'm outside, and especially at night and after a fire, and the kids were running around. We were playing drums and singing and everything. I mean, we did our own little honoring last night of the earth. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then Thursday this week, April 23rd, there's St. George's Day in the Christian tradition. So St. George is often seen as a symbol of courage and protection. And the day itself is connected to standing firm in your faith, even when things feel uncertain. Very powerful message for us in the times that we're living in today. So the story here has been told in many different ways over time, but there's the well-known image of St. George and the dragon, and that carries with it a very core meaning, right? The triumph over good over evil, faith over fear, and the courage to face what's in front of you without backing down. So this, of course, is a universal message, but we lift our Christian friends during this time.
Yeah, that's a very Catholic one, St. George. Now, any former Catholics in here? Oh, wow, you sat all together. I love it. You're gonna be starting a Hail Mary any moment. Okay, that's great.
Excellent. All right, just for fun this week is also Thursday, and it's National Picnic Day on Thursday. So this is a simple one that might just be the point, right? Whether it's actually getting outside for a meal or just taking a few minutes to step away from your usual routine, take a couple of deep breaths outside in the fresh air, and let that be a nice little reminder to slow down and enjoy what's right in front of you.
Oh, yeah. What was that old song? Slow down. Wait. What was it? It goes, slow down, you move too fast. Do you remember that song? Gotta make the morning last.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah,
was that from the 60s?
70s probably, yeah.
70s
I think 70s. Early 70s. Let's hope it was.
Feeling groovy.
Yeah, feeling groovy.
Totally
Yep, that's got to be 70s.
Yeah, for sure. That's when we were feeling groovy.
Yeah, groovy, man. Yeah.
All right, friends. Before I send you into this week's episode, your journal prompt for this week is: how do you want to show up for what is shifting in your life? How do you want to show up for what is shifting in your life? Thank you for your time this morning. And with that, friends, welcome again to episode 409 of Experience of the Soul. This is Sacred Spaces.
Wow. Sean, that's a beautiful inward question. That's going to propel us into the next, couple of shows, because it is always a choice, isn't it? How we show up in life and what energy do we bring to wherever we may be. And I've been spending time with some younger children. And it's been real fun for me, again, since my son's now in college. And you know how it is, those college ages, they're trying out all their adult stuff, and which is great. But it's fun for me to work with littler kids again and to remind them that they actually have a choice, you know, how they want to show up. I mean, that I just said that very thing. I said, well, you know, you can decide how you want to show up. If kids at school are weird, you know, you can decide if you want to respond to that or just go, yes, I am, and walk forward, you know, like to own who you are in a powerful way and not let what somebody else says about you, like determine, you know, how you feel about yourself.
It's a beautiful message for today's youth. I mean,
for all of us. Yes, yes.
Well, true. Yep.
You know, with social media, everybody's trying to look good and get followers and do the same thing. And now the algorithms change, so we got to do it different. I mean, my goodness, you know, so yeah, it is powerful. And I think it's why I'm so intent on bringing this sacred in, because, my friends, when God is at the center, what people think becomes less and less important, and we're looking for our divine guidance and how we're being called to move forward and to move in certain ways. And we move really into the observer self, this higher spiritual self, where we can see a situation happening and watch ourselves and know, no, we're not going to go that way. We're going to go a different way, because we're becoming more and more conscious of how I'm operating in the world. And we want to keep this high spiritual ideal in our minds. And so today we're talking about sacred spaces. And I've already mentioned the space that we're in, and I really want to honor Carol Ann and Gary. This was quite a feat to get this here, because this is truly a Mongolian yurt. And even the pieces that make it, all of the pieces that you see, I forget what these little pieces are called. They have a name, but it's also called a ger. And each of these pieces has been hand painted, and even each of the colors has a very special meaning. The north, the south entrances have different meanings. But by and large, what the yurt symbolizes is eternity itself, and that's why it's in a circle. So, and then the opening in the center, of course, the very practical use is for, you know, in Mongolia in the freezing cold, there's, you know, a wood-burning stove there. That's where the smoke goes up, or a fire, and the smoke goes up. But the idea is that is the portal for God to come in and through. And so I love, to me, when I walk into a yurt like we did today, there is a feeling of the sacred. Did you feel that? Yes. And of course, it's not just the yurt itself or the ger, but Carol Ann's intention, her prayers, her work, my prayers, my work, your prayer, as we set up our connection. This all adds to it. But the place itself is intended for the sacred, and I believe that's a felt experience. And so, because so much is trying to get our attention in today's world, on the news, on shows, everything is funny, even the sacred is made fun of, and I don't like that. I'm very willing to be called old-fashioned. I'm very willing to be called a fuddy-duddy or whatever. You might think of worse words, but not you. No, not you. No, just other people. Not everybody loves me like you. But I have just found that my respect of the sacred has really gifted me. I will say it that way. I was at visiting family. This is, I don't know, maybe almost a year ago. Yeah. Almost a year ago, and we were at the supper table, and somebody said a joke about the sacred, and my son started to laugh, and I said, And he looked, I said, we never laugh about joking about the sacred. And my brother-in-law, who said it, I said, this is your home, and I respect you, and you can say whatever you want, but my son will not be allowed to laugh at that. And I just put that down like that, and he said, okay. And that was the end of that. So it is something, I only say that to say, from time to time, I have to stand up about it for real with people I know and love. But by and large, it's the way I carry myself throughout life. It's the reason that we do this segment at the beginning, This Week in Spiritual History, is to honor the sacred in all of the traditions. And I think when we start to do that, we can then honor the people of those traditions. And there's less fear, intimidation, and worry, and all of those things that the world seems to be so focused on. So I wanted to lift up for us this idea of sacred spaces, because maybe there's a way you're being called to either go to sacred spaces or create even more of one in your own home. Maybe there's a special room or a meditation area, that you're being called to create. And I'm about to do that myself in a new way in my new home. And it's always fun for me because I've had so many different types of sacred spaces in my home. Like one time I was really working with the chakras, and I had this tiny little closet. Was really a closet. Probably most people would just put shoes or something in there. It was so small, but this was a very special meditation area for me. A perfect little candle with these images I worked with, and I put them on the wall. I would sit on the floor, and I matched them up with my chakras. So every day, I was centering in on certain images with these chakras, seeking to awaken and align, the chakra, that spiritual energy. And I would just feel like, woo, I would get that energy going. I would come out of there, woo, ready to go. And no book or like outside activity, I don't think would have gotten that. It was a very internal experience, but because I created something sacred for myself. So, I also wanted to mention to those of you local, I'm trying to remember the name of it, so we may have to edit this, but there's a place locally, and it has the Stations at the Cross, and it's outside. Do you know the name of the place? Carmelite Monastery, yes. And you can drive through or walk through. The walk is, quite long if you were to walk it, but that is a beautiful, beautiful imagery, and it's all outside. So it's at your own pace, and because it's like in this kind of canopy of trees, it feels as if you're in nature's sanctuary, to a degree. So I want to encourage you to seek out, connect with, and even create your own sacred spaces if you aren't already. You probably, I know those of you here probably are, but some people new to this show may not be there in their journey yet, and I wanted to lift it up, especially because so many people tell me that they want to meditate and they don't know how. Well, part of meditating is creating a space that is conducive to meditation, shutting the world out. Carol Ann, where's your, here? You may have to order one of these that says, "Do not disturb prayers in progress" for your door. Right? I love this. Yeah, I'll put this here.
Yeah.
But I love that idea of, figuring out a way to create a time and a space that's just for you, for your sacred practice. So one of the reasons you may not be able to meditate well is that you haven't created a space that supports you, that's conducive to the sacred. I want you to think about what kind of music are you playing in that space. What energy are you bringing into that space? Is everything on your phone so that you're also still hearing text messages as you're trying to meditate? I know that sounds, you're probably saying, oh, nobody would do that. Lots of people do that. Lots of people do that. So learning that the sacred is, and creating sacred space is not only a gift to your soul, it is a necessary aspect of the spiritual journey. And historically, sacred spaces were what? They were places to come into to remind you of the sacred, to get you out of the doldrums of life and give you this feeling of the elevation, of divine connection. That, in fact, it was possible to have a divine connection. And in truth, the word sanctuary really means place of safety. Yeah. So sad how so many of our churches are not that. They're not that. So think about that. A sanctuary is a place of safety. It's a place of worship, yes, but also of silence and peace. So many of our churches have become performance venues to the point that it feels like you're at a rock concert. And, I know at our church we do upbeat music, but then there's always a time of quiet and silence too. So it's worship, but then there's a time for listening. And that's what creates that feeling of the sacred. Yeah. Oh, there's a big bumblebee in here, I just noticed. It's okay. Just be careful. Yeah, well, maybe that little soul needed to be in here today. Mm-hmm. I don't know. But yeah, so give some thought to how am I moving into spaces? Are there sacred spaces that I need to create? Are there sacred spaces I need to visit? Yeah, give that some thought. My favorite sacred space, I would say, is probably in a building, is probably a yurt or a teepee. That said, a sanctuary can be beautiful as well. Yeah. I don't know if any of you have, folks who are here today, and certainly our listeners online, if you've done travel in Europe. And if you do travel in Europe, you always visit what? Anybody know what I'm going to say? Yeah, say it out loud. Cathedrals, exactly. It's funny. There's a lot of beautiful cathedrals in the U.S. nobody ever visits, but you go to Europe, that's what you do. You go to cathedrals. And I did Ireland and Scotland, and all that. This is many years ago. And I went in this cathedral in Ireland, and I sat in the very back, and I just decided to say a few prayers. And as soon as I sat down, I took a couple deep breaths, and this sunlight all of a sudden came through a window and just hit me. And it felt...
It's right here. Sorry.
There it goes.
There it goes.
And it felt as if, like, the light went on almost from the inside because it was so bright. And I thought, I feel like God just visited me. It felt like a holy moment. And I thought it was so interesting. I was already feeling good in the sacred space, but somehow it was that sunlight hitting at that moment. It felt like a little blessing. Well, what I know is if I wouldn't have gone to the sacred space, I never would have had the experience. So sometimes we have to put ourselves in a position to experience the sacred. Sometimes we don't know it's going to happen. Sometimes we don't know what is available to us, in these places. So anyway, my point is, my friends, seek out places of the sacred and even go outside your own tradition. There might be something to learn. When I was dealing with a physical illness many years ago, I was in my late 20s, and, I almost died. And I don't talk about it really a lot because I feel like such a different person than then, but I was really reaching for whatever help I could get, And I had a friend who belonged to a Japanese temple, and they did something called okeome. I had never heard of it. And I said, what is it? She said, well, why don't you come? It's where you receive light. I said, okay. So anyway, the woman I went with, her family, their daughter had a brain tumor, and it seemed to be helping her brain tumor. And so I went in, and you would get a little like kneeling bench. What do you call those? But I'm talking about a little bench to kneel on. And then they would come and do these chants and things, and it was all in Japanese. And I went every day after that until I felt a shift. And I did not understand one word. But the intentions, the prayers, it was like the air somehow was changed in that place because there were so many prayers being said. So if you haven't been in a sacred space like that lately, try it out. Go in one. I've knocked on the door of a church and said, can I go pray in your sanctuary? I've never been in here, and I was driving by, and I liked the energy. Could I pray? Yeah. They say, yeah, sure. But then they have to go unlock it. It's funny how all our sanctuaries are so locked now, So think about that. Yeah, that sacred space is there a space that's calling to you, and also knowing that a sacred space is wherever I am. It's not just in a building. We're going to work more on that on the next show, but. I say all of the mystics. That's why I started to say, I've heard many different mystics quoted as saying, God is a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. And I've held on to that. One of my own mentors, Reverend Greg Barrett, mentioned that to me, and I like the idea. In other words, you cannot get away from God. God is wherever you are. So my point is, as we go throughout our day, if we could tap into this one idea, the sacred space is wherever I am, and then to go further, and to think about my body is sacred, my mind is sacred. Am I polluting these sacred spaces by what I'm viewing, by what I'm putting in, by what I'm, taking into my body? Am I polluting the sacred by not being mindful that my body is a temple? That this is a sacred space I've been given this lifetime anyway. For those of you who believe in reincarnation, yeah, we know this is just the body, but the Bible says it is a temple, and it is the housing of our soul and our spiritual journey this lifetime. So it does deserve to be honored and respected. So this is, for me, an expansive idea, because we first start with the physical. Okay, we go to a space and we experience something, yes. And maybe we go outside of our own religion, we said, or we spend time outside. We go sit by a tree. We look at the stars. We feel the sun on our face. But ultimately, we are the sacred space that we take everywhere. And so the idea that we are nurturing and honoring this sacred space, I think, is some of our highest work. But for me, the external helps me remember. Like, I need reminders. I need reminders of my sacredness. So, everyone who knows me well knows I almost always have prayer beads with me. They're on my arm or around my neck because they remind me of the sacred. They remind me to keep, my journey closed, because I use them for my prayers and for my affirmations, like you would use a rosary, perhaps. So, pause and use as an affirmation. That helps me. So the sacred spaces that we go into remind us to elevate our awareness. They remind us to elevate our thinking out of the doldrums and into the divine. So, as I was talking about that space nearby, I was going to say we ought to just get a little group and go over there sometime to experience that. Yeah,
that would be cool.
Yeah, it would be cool, wouldn't it? Yeah, it'd be a wonderful sacred space. So, I do believe too, as we learn and grow, as we develop on the journey, that we are called into deeper awareness. And there's a musician I've followed. His name is actually St. Finnegan. Can't remember if I told you about him. And he has some songs that are kind of high energy and everything, and they're spiritual in nature. And he's been through quite a journey too. He had a real significant health journey. He got Lyme disease. And he nearly died. Nobody could figure out what it was and everything. Anyway, I've dealt with Lyme disease myself. My son got it. So I connected with a lot of his journey. Anyway, recently I noticed he took everything off of his social media that was about anything and put out one new song, and it's called Presence. And it's been really interesting to watch his journey. He went from having really long hair to then he cut all of his hair off. And he said, yeah, I know I used to look free. Now I feel free. And now he's at the point of presence. I'd love to try to get him on the show. I think it would be a great guest on the show. But my point is, in all of the outer journey, we all eventually get to this. It doesn't really matter what your religious or, denomination you may think you're a part of. Eventually, they're all leading us back to God as the center that is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. It is, in fact, living, as St. Finnegan's song is called, the presence. That we are truly the sacred space. Yeah. So the song we sang earlier, it will be in the show notes. It's the one I grew up on, called Sanctuary, and a lot of our Youth of Unity groups sing it. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. So, my friends, this is our hope. This is our prayer for you and your journey, that you will continue to know that the presence of God lives in you, that, in fact, you are called to be a sacred space. You are called to be holy, that at the very level of the soul, in fact, you are sacred. Your body is sacred. Your mind is sacred. So we hope, we pray that you honor yourself by doing this work, that you also go into some new spaces to experience something new. Try to see if you can find the sacred in other spaces that are different from your own. Spend extended time outside. Do something to help your soul grow and expand in consciousness as you learn more about the sacred being that you are. So, my friends, thank you so much for joining us today. We thank our live audience as well. And, my friends, we're honored to support your journey. Thank you for your sacred trust. Thank you for your financial support. We love to have you along the journey with us, and we look forward to seeing you next week. And blessings on the journey.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Experience of the Soul with Cynthia Alice Anderson. If this message resonated with you, we invite you to share it with someone who might need it today. This show is made possible by listeners like you, and we're grateful for the community that helps keep these conversations available to all. You can learn more or contribute to the show at cynthiaaliceanderson.com/donate. Produced by Kilgore Creative and a production of the Soulworks Group Incorporated. Until next time, take good care. You're listening to the Experience of the Soul podcast channel, bringing you inspiration, teachings, and practices to support your spiritual journey.